Hey, what's up everybody? How are you doing? So, I kind of got sick, so I stopped posting in September. I didn't do any vlogs or anything like that since the last time that you saw me. But this is my September wrap-up. I read a lot in September. And I read a lot of romantasy, which is a term that I'm not used to saying, so forgive me. But I dived into the world of Sarah J. Maas in September for the first time in my life. And I dived into the world of romance fantasy for the first time in my life. And I could not stop. I got so hooked on some of the romance that I read this month. Not all of it, but some of it. I did a vlog of reading your recommendations, and honestly, it was mostly all Liz recommendations at that point. And she recommended A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I got the whole set, and I read quite a lot of it. I read a lot of it, and I got hooked. So let's get into everything I read in September. I will go through the order that I read everything. I did DNF 2 books, unfortunately. So I technically read 9 complete books, and then the other 2, I tried, but I could not get through them for whatever reason. So most of what I read in September was actually in that vlog, but there are some other books here that I have finished and either loved or hated. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's start with the first book that I started in the month, which was A Court of Thorns and Roses, the original, the first one, the one that started it all. Now, feels like it was I don't know, 3 months ago when I first started reading this. I read this pretty quick. And I will say, I had no expectations of liking this book. For whatever reason, there is a stigma around Sarah J. Maas and her books and her audience and her readers. But I don't care. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. Was it the best book? No, I gave it a 4-star. I thought it was good. You know, I thought Farah was good in the beginning, and then I felt like she got this little she became the little weakling in the middle, and obviously it's a Beauty and the Beast reimagining and whatnot. And I was never a fan of Tamlin. I thought he was boring, bland. I didn't think he had any personality. And honestly, I feel like my intuition was pretty good. I had no idea what was going to happen throughout the rest of the story. And you can see that in my vlog. I even said, what happens in the story? Does, is it all in this one book with the Beauty and Beast, or does it carry forward? I didn't really know where the story and the plot was going to go. But I enjoyed it for what it is. I thought it was a very easy read, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. I was pleasantly surprised, and I did end up tabbing it because I wanted to know and understand what the world is. So not long after reading that, I wanted to go straight into A Court of Mist and Fury because I was curious what's gonna happen. You know, the ending of Court of Thorns and Roses, you know, is quite interesting, and you know, you've got Rhys who's an interesting character, and she has to spend all this time with him in this book, and you know, you already get an inkling that there's a little flirtation there, there's something going on, and boy did this book deliver. I gave this a 5-star. I completely fell in love with Rhys. I know there's a lot of haters out there who do not like him. And I can understand as you get through the books, it does get a little bit boring, their relationship. I do agree. I do think it's a bit much, and it's a little creepy when you get into his mind, especially when you get into Frost and Starlight, and you see his POV, and it's a little icky, but this book alone, as a standalone, I really enjoyed. I really liked it, and I kept thinking, oh no, I hope something happens to him. I really didn't like the ending. I was like, I'm gonna give this a 5-star, and then I came to the ending, and I was like, this is gonna be a 4.5. I can't believe they did that. I really was annoyed with the ending of this book, but I kind of understand why it happened, obviously, because you have A Court of Wings and Ruin, which, you know, is the build up to the war and whatnot. So I love this book. I loved Reese. I loved the build up to him. I loved that it was more of a slow burn as opposed to the Tamlin, which was like instant. Actually, it wasn't really instant with Tamlin, but I just never liked the spark. There was no spark. Here, there was spark, and I was jealous of Farah. I really was. I wanted Reese to myself. So anyway, this one I enjoyed. I thought it for what it was. Yes, it's corny and cheesy, but honestly, maybe because I wasn't feeling good, I was sick, and I was just like, oh, this is such an easy, cozy read. I don't care. So I finished that one. I gave that a 5-star. And then the next book that I read, and I ended up DNFing, was The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Is it Taylor Adams? Yes, it is Taylor Adams, and this was also in my recommendations video, and I just couldn't get into this book. I was listening to it, so that might be the reason. Basically, this girl leaves a 1-star review on an author's Amazon listing, and he gets really upset, and he asks her to remove it, and then he's like stalking her. It's just chaotic. This book was chaotic to me, and I really didn't like the way it was written. I thought it wasn't written very well, so I just couldn't get through it. I didn't like listening to it. It was just like awful. Maybe if I had read it, it would have been better, because the narration, I don't know, maybe the way they narrated it maybe wouldn't have been the way that I had read it. You never know with these things, but I had to DNF. I got to midway through part 2, which was only like 35% of the book, or maybe even less of that. It's kind of hard with audio exactly where you are, but I couldn't finish it, so I ended up just stopping there. Next book I picked up, which was also a recommendation. Liz recommended Colleen Hoover to me, specifically Ugly Love. So I read this book, and I can't say that it added anything to my life reading this book. I'm not sure if I am gonna be a Colleen Hoover fan. I thought that the book itself was fine. Like, it's readable. I read this in one night. It was very readable. Like, you can get through this book very quickly. But it seemed ugly to me. I don't agree with these types of love stories. I found it a little too icky and a little too close to, like, maybe not even close to home, but just, it's not, if I'm going to read a love story, I want like this aching build up and, you know, sweet, nice people to, like, most of the time. I don't know if I want, like, these dark romances. It's not even a dark romance. It's just, it wasn't, like all of, like, the love scenes and things was a little icky to me and kind of uncomfortable at times. I thought some of them were particularly uncomfortable. And I think it was, like, that's on purpose because of what's going on with the main guy, Miles, because of what happened to him in the past, but I also don't think that excuses it either. And I think that she should have ran a mile from him. What's her name? Tate. Tate should have ran a mile from this guy. I think he's too damaged. I think the ending tied up the romance way too quickly. Not enough time had gone by for him to really get through his trauma. It was like he just spoke to one woman and he's like, okay, fine, I'll get through it. And you know, I don't want to, like, I kind of spoil the book. I definitely spoiled the book in my vlog, but I don't want to spoil the book in every single video. So if you haven't read this, then, you know, obviously I'm trying to be as unspoilery as I can, but I didn't enjoy it, so I gave it a 2-star. And then I needed to get back into the fantasy, so I picked up A Court of Wings and Ruin, and this is a big, hefty book. Now, this one is all about the looming war, and I mean, at the beginning I feel like the beginning was good. Not that the book wasn't good, but the beginning was good because Farah is, you know, she's back with Tamlin and she's trying to deceive him and get away and stuff, and her and Lucien gotta go up to the court, the night court, and I thought that part was good. I thought that was entertaining. It was exciting. I was like, what's going to happen next? And I do think there was a lull in this book. I feel like the middle of the book was a lot of, you know, like story building still and a lot of, like, very character driven in a way. And I don't know if I was all that interested in all of the characters. I do find that they were very childish in this book compared to the previous book. Especially Farah. I found her to be incredibly childish, always giving a rude gesture to Cassian or whatnot. And I don't know. I mean, it's not like I don't like those other characters, but I felt like there was a lull in the book, and I also felt that Reese and Farah got boring in this book. Like the love scenes with them and like their romance was just a bit boring. I wasn't into it as I was with Mist and Fury. I did end up giving it a 4-star because I think as a complete book, I think it's good, and I don't think it deserves anything less. But it wasn't like Mist and Fury. It just didn't grab me as much, and it was a little bit of a slog. I feel like they could have edited this one down. But regardless, I gave that one a 4-star. And then, because I couldn't help myself, I wanted to know what happens. I grabbed this one, which is The Frost and Starlight, and it's tiny. It's a little tiny novella, and this is pointless. Like, they could have edited that one down and added this as the little epilogue. I think nothing happens in this story. So I gave this a 2-star. I just thought it was kind of a waste of time for me to read it, because they could have added just one little note or a couple paragraphs of that. What's like the only like interesting part in here was what was going on with Nesta, which was this like a tiny little bit of this book. So they could have just added that in to the Silver Flames one. I always say that wrong. I think it's Silver Flames, Court of Silver Flames, which is the last book of this particular series that I have not read. I just don't think this was necessary, and I think it's more of a cash grab. So yeah, I read that and I gave it 2 stars. The next book I read, I had to DNF, which was The Devil May Dance. This one is by Jake Tapper, and my dad recommended this one, and I just felt like it was a little too, it had too many political figures in there and too many things from the 60s that I just wasn't in the mood to really fully like really understand what was going on. There was Frank Sinatra, and it just seemed very confusing to me. I was listening to an audio and there were just too many name drops, and then it goes into Scientology, and it's supposed to be like a thriller detective type book, but I wasn't thrilled. I wasn't exciting. I just felt like it was a little convoluted and a little hard to follow, if I'm being completely honest. So if I had the actual physical book, maybe it would have been better. Maybe I just don't like audiobooks, or they have to be specific audiobooks, or they have to be a specific narrator. It might just be me, but I found it very hard to read this book, and I DNF'd it, and I did end up giving it a 2-star as well. Maybe for DNFs I shouldn't give the book any kind of rating, because maybe it is a good book and maybe I would enjoy it more if I read it. But I just felt like, for me, my personal experience, it was a 2-star. Alright, and then I wanted a romance book, and I was also trying to get into the books that were supposed to be on my September TBR, which I had not even read yet at that point, which I think was like the middle of September or even past that point. And so I picked up The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and I read this pretty quickly. This follows Rowan and Zara. This is the first of the trilogy. I'm glad that I read it in order, because I initially had Terms and Conditions, which is the middle book, and then you've got Final Offer, which is the last book, which I have not read. I'm glad I started with this one because it sets it up a little bit better, and you kind of understand what's going on in terms of the grandfather and the will and all that stuff. And I didn't mind this one. I ended up giving it a 3-star. I don't think it was amazing, and I think there was a little parts in here that I felt were a little icky. Like I felt like the intimate parts, there was some ickiness. I don't know I can't explain it, but it just wasn't, it wasn't my preference. Let's just put it that way. But basically it's a grumpy sunshine trope. So Rowan is this grumpy guy. I mean, it's all 3 brothers, right? So Rowan is, I think, the middle brother. and he super grumpy, and he doesn't like showing his emotions. And Zara is this bright, lovely light that just walks into him, and he can't resist himself around her. He's like, oh, who is this girl? She's so amazing, blah blah blah. I feel like with these types of romances, what I'm finding is, I get that I can understand why maybe the man who's super grumpy would be attracted to the bubbly girl, but why would the bubbly girl want someone who's so unpleasant? Like, that's the only thing that I don't understand, because there's a fine line between being grumpy and then rude and horrible and arrogant. I think with this book, it worked fine. It wasn't perfect, but I don't think he was too far out there where he was unlikable. I didn't think he was super likable, but he wasn't super unlikable for me. So I gave it a 3-star. It was fine. It was kind of what I wanted. It was a nice cozy read at the time, very easy to read. So it was fine. And then I decided to go back to a book that I had started in August that I just ended up just putting to the side, which was Tomorrow by Gabrielle-FrancesYT. Now, for whatever reason, I just wasn't the type of book that I picked up and could read like all the way through. I don't know what it was about it. I read a little bit at a time, and then I picked up another book and I read a little bit at a time, and whatnot. And then by the time that I had, I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna finish this book. I was like halfway through it. That's when I really started enjoying it, and I really got into it, and I really understood like where the book was going. I think the first third of the book, I wasn't entirely sure what this book was trying to do. I just didn't understand it, but I think as I continue to understand these characters, you follow actually 3 characters. The blurb, it says you only follow Sam and Sadie, but there is a 3rd character in this book who is quite relevant and present throughout most of the story. And maybe there's purpose to why they're not in the back, but you kind of follow these three characters who are very entwined with their lives. They're friends, but they're also colleagues and business partners and roommates at one point. They're very, very entwined with each other's lives. And to be honest, they're all really quite different from each other. And had they not had this maybe one interest in games and gaming and building a game and a business around games and things like that, would they really have been friends for their lives? I don't really think so. So it's kind of the one thing that I think brought them together, kept them together. Obviously they had some similarities in some of their backgrounds, and then they had completely no similarities at all. So I don't know, when I got into like their different lives and their backstories and who they really were as characters, I started to really enjoy this book. And then obviously there's parts of the book that are pretty, I wasn't expecting it. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are parts in the book that I was not expecting. I'm not going to say it was hard to read. I will say that. And I think ultimately I really liked the ending of this book. I liked that it did not, and it says it in the back, this is a story of Sam and Sadie. It is not a romance. And I liked that it didn't turn into a romance. Because Sam and Sadie, if it were any other book, the author would spin it and they'd end up together and blah, 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 blah. I liked how this story went. At first, I just wasn't sure where the story was going, and I was a little concerned that it might go in that way, but it didn't. And I really liked that. I really liked how it was open-ended at the end as well. I've got something in my eye. I thought it was just a clever book and interesting, and some of the chapters were different, like written differently, different perspectives, different like entire universes. There was some interesting parts in it. I did end up tabbing it a little bit. At first I didn't tab it at all, but I did end up tabbing some nice parts of the, I think just the prose, to be honest. There were some things in here that really like triggered me. So I gave this a 5-star, just simply because I think the last 2/3 of the book were great. And I really started to enjoy it. And it was different from all the romance that I had just read throughout the month, so I really enjoyed that. However, I wanted to get back into my romance, so I went into Terms and Conditions from Lauren Asher. This is the second book in the Billionaires trilogy, and this one I did not like at all. I gave it a 2-star. I thought this one was hideous. I hated Declan. I thought Declan was horrible. So when I say that there's a fine line between, you know, painting a grumpy character who's kind of moody, versus just a downright horrible person who has no nice qualities, I don't know any nice qualities of Declan. I don't. He was only nice to, what's her name? Iris, and that was it. And, yeah, I didn't like him at all. I thought it was horrible. It's more of a slower burn too, because they don't really end up like getting together until right at the end of the book. And then it's like all a mad rush, and then obviously there's something that splits them up, and then they give then something that brings them back, and it's just like, you know, it's like those typical things where there's always something that happens in the 3rd act to break up the couple and blah blah. And normally I wouldn't mind that, but I really didn't believe in their relationship at all. I didn't understand her motivation behind it, his motivation behind it. It didn't work for me. They had no chemistry, and that really has to be part of the writing. I don't think that, and sadly, you know, this might be, I think this one has a better rating than the fine print, but at least on Goodreads, I don't think the writing was good. Because had the writing been good, then they would have been written in a way that they do have chemistry, and there is like a little bit of tension there. There was not. It was fake. It wasn't well done. So sadly I had to give this a 2-star. I didn't enjoy it at all. I just don't think it worked. So then the last book that I read, which I read in 2 nights because it was a very easy book to read and also it was enjoyable, was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And this one I did tab as well. So this one, this is a vampire romance book. So it's a romantasy book again. This was in my September TBR, so thank goodness I read another September TBR book because I really didn't read any others other than fine print. And I'm trying to read out some other books, I just couldn't get into them. This one I thought was good. I don't think this one is written very well. I think that it's a great story and I like it. I don't think it's super original. However, the only, like, the parts, like, when I say it was not written very well, for me, there's a lot of fighting in this book and combat descriptions, and I don't think that Carissa Broadbent is very good at describing the action in the book, which I can assume is probably a hard thing to do, but I felt the language to be quite airy and floaty and, you know, ambiguous at times in terms of what was happening. I was trying to envision, you know, what was happening, and I don't think she painted a very clear picture sometimes with the battles and the trials, which this book is all about, like these 6 different trials, or I think it's 5 or 6 different trials, and there's a lot of fighting. So I would, you know, I think you kind of need to be good at that, and I don't think it was there. However, having said that, I did give it a 4-star because I enjoyed the book. It is what it is. It was a nice, cozy read for me to read at the end of the month. I just finished a few days ago, and, you know, I actually ordered the second book. I wanted to get, I'm so annoyed because when I bought this one, I could have pre-ordered the second one, but now it's being picked up by a publisher and it's gonna look different. So I've ordered the second book, and it's the hardcover of this one for the Ashes and Something. But at least it kind of goes with this one, because I didn't want, and then the second book, at least where I am, maybe not in the US, but the second book, I can't get till next year if I use the new publication book. So I had to dig to find the second book in this sort of copy, which was very annoying. I don't like that, and I can get why people get frustrated with that. I got the second book because I want to know what happens. And I think one of the reasons why I gave this a 4 stars because it wasn't predictable at the end. There is something that happens at the end that I was not expecting. And I thought that the Carissa Broadbent, I thought that she took a risk with the ending with this one. I think she could have played it very safe, which a lot of authors probably do, but she didn't. And I liked that. I thought that was good. Because obviously there was a part in the ending where I was expecting to happen, and it did happen. But then right after that, I wasn't expecting the rest. And I was like, oh, what is going on here? Okay. So I'm very intrigued what the second book is going to be about. Is she going to go in one direction, or is she going to stick to maybe the same direction that she's in, but just make it a little bit more complicated? So I don't know. I'm intrigued as to what happens. And it was very easy to read. I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be like, because it's like, you know, a big floppy book. I thought, that's going to take me a while. This is one of the reasons why I didn't really pick it up sooner, because it's quite a heavy book, and I feel like a big paperback like this is not the easiest to hold and read, but I read it super quickly. Very easy to read, and yeah, I'm not like overly in love with the love story, like between the two characters, which is, what is his name? His name is Rain. Yeah, it's Aurea and Rain. Maybe it's just how he looks, because he's described as someone that it's not the style that I would like, with his like long hair and big huge shoulders, and he's got like reddish hair as well. Which is fine if that's your type, it's just not my type. So for me, it would be like, okay, fine. You know, I think it was fine. I gave it a 4 star. I don't think it deserves anything less because of what happens at the end. I thought, oh, okay, this is cool. And it left me intrigued. And it's not like it was a boring ending, which I thought was really good, because it could have been a boring ending and a very safe ending. And then the second book would just open up to that, but now the second book's going to be like, well, where is it going to go? And that intrigues me, and I like that she took a risk. So I'm curious about her other books, but I'm also not, because I do think that her writing is a little bit floaty. I just don't know how to really describe it. It's not very precise when she's describing stuff. So yeah. I am currently reading these 3 books, which I didn't end up finishing, and all 3 of these are on my September TBR. They are more like spooky vibes, so I think for October they'll be fine. And I'll probably do like an updated, like maybe full reads video, and I'm just gonna pick what I want, because I think I've realized I'm more of a mood reader. So I think this month I was just really full on to my romances, and maybe this next month I will be as well. Like Echo is like a horror. At first I wasn't keen on it. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I read the first like 25 pages, I wasn't really sure, but I'm on only page 66 or 67 at this point, and I'm enjoying it more because I've gotten into the characters a little bit more, and I'm intrigued because there was something that happened with Nick in one scene which was very like cool, and I hope there's more of that, and I think there will be in this story. So I think this is more of like a slow burn horror, which I think is why some people give it lower ratings I've seen on Goodreads, because they're like, oh, nothing happens in the book. But I think it's like more like of a build up, and I have to be in the mood for that, and I just haven't been. Aside from when I read it and I got in the mood for it. So hopefully I can finish this month. And I also started reading 12 Nights at Rotherhouse, and this one I'm only on page 25, so not far in at all. And this this travel, what is he? He is a travel writer, and he basically has gotten into this house. He wants to spend 13 nights there, and write about it in a book, and, you know, make it the next Amity Hill, you know, house, in terms of, because it's got like reputation of being haunted and stuff, and the owner's like, you know, he called the owners, like, and explained what he wanted to do, and she's like, are you sure? I don't want no ghost hunters. I'm imagining that's how she sounds, but probably not. And she lets him in the end. So right now he's really just spent, I think, one night there. So nothing's happened yet. And then I also started reading Ripe, which is by Sarah Rose Eder. And this one, I'm only on page 27. This one is super weird. I'm not sure. I mean, I knew it was going to be weird. I really did. It's just a tiny little book. I knew this was going to be weird, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I started reading it, I think, in the middle of all my romances, and I was like, oh, this is weird. I think I have to, again, have to be in the right mood, because there's a lot of sinister undertone to this, which is what I was expecting. But again, I have to be in the mood. So yeah, those are the 3 books that I have ongoing, and yeah, you'll have to wait and see what else I'm going to be reading in another video, hopefully soon. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, if you did watch to the end, and I will hopefully see you very soon in another video. Thanks, bye.